welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to business confidence. This week, in our first episode of 2023, we talk to Ashutosh Garg, or Ash as he likes to be known. He's the founder of Equation Coaching and The Brand Called You, a media tech global platform that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience and wisdom. He is also a published author of 8 best-selling books, including his latest release, How to Survive Failure and Come Out Stronger. There's so much that Ash says in this interview. Listen out for great stuff on risk-taking, his role in his business as he sees it, and the importance of having a group of trusted advisors and many other things besides. But first, let's listen to how Ash started out.
I started working immediately after an MBA from one of the top schools in India when I was 21. I spent the first 17 years of my life with India Tobacco, which is part of British American Tobacco. When I left them in 96, I was managing director of their entire international operations in Singapore. Then I moved into aerospace, so big jump from tobacco to aerospace. Was head of Asia for 2 large American aerospace companies. And then in 2003, when I turned 46, I quit the corporate world and became an entrepreneur. And I founded India's second largest chain of pharmacies. That's the wrong thing to say. I didn't found the second large. I founded a chain which grew into the second largest chain of pharmacies. And, for your viewers and listeners, the pharmacies were built around what I call the Boots model. And my first line of the business plan was build Boots in India, which is the same look and feel of the Boots stores. Oh, wow. I've also been a member of the YPO, which is earlier used to be called the Young Presidents Organization. Now it's just YPO. For the last 28 years, I was chairman of South Asia. And then I also served on several boards. One very interesting board that I served on for 8 years was on the board of Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. And we've just coming out of the pandemic, and Gavi's played a very, very significant role in helping vaccinate the whole country, the whole world. When I turned 60, I decided to quit quit my business, sold my company at a very good value, and exited from it. I started I'm also a published author of 8 books, and I'm working on my 9th one now. So this podcast thing, I really started with the objective of giving back. And when I say giving back, I just go back to when I was in 21, 22, 23, I was always looking for words of wisdom from senior corporate leaders from around the world, and there was nothing available. I remember reading a book, My Years with General Motors by Alfred Sloan, at least half a dozen times, because I thought that was really one of the true Bibles of management. And then came, Iacocca's book and the Pepsi story and so on and so forth. Today, when there are thousands and thousands of books, the young people aren't reading. Yes. So I said, let me start conversations in a world that I know world leaders, I know corporate leaders. And that's how I started 4 years ago. And today, I believe we are the largest platform in the world. Next week, we will cross 1,600 recordings. We get 150,000 views and listens every day. And, we started putting 1-minute extracts on India's biggest competitor to TikTok, called Chingari. And in the last 1 month, we are seeing 2 million views per day, which wow. To me, I just find it amazing that these numbers are coming. So that's what I've done, the corporate world, entrepreneurship, author. I'm also on television very often, once or twice a week, pontificating on something silly, from elections to vaccination to something or the other. Yeah. So that's my whole life.
Well, it sounds absolutely fantastic. Can I go back to the bit where you were saying you left corporate life? Mm-hmm. And how well did corporate life prepare you for being an entrepreneur? Some people come out of it and find it, totally different.
Yeah. So I would say it did not. In my very first book, I start by saying on the 1st of April, 2003, I woke up. and I realized that I had no job. I had no assistant. My Microsoft Outlook calendar was empty. And I realized that I had joined the ranks of the educated unemployed. Um, and for 3, 4 months, I really did nothing. And you know, what I also told myself was that, I've been fortunate, I've earned a lot of money and so on. And that I'm going to spend the rest of my life playing golf. But I realized that you can't possibly play golf more than 2 or 3 times a week because the body is getting older, so it gets tired. So therefore, it was a huge challenge. And when I did start Guardian Pharmacy, which is the brand name of the company, the first store, I remember standing in the store myself, and I had taken my secretary and my assistant with me, and that was the only staff member I had in the company. And she would call my mother and my wife and say that I'm not sure how Mr. Garg is going to pay everyone's salaries, because how can he stand behind a counter and suddenly think that he'll earn enough money to pay for everything. So it was a big transition, very, very big transition that I went through.
And just in terms of that transition, so I'm imagining you there at that first store, and you're sort of thinking through this. Was there ever a moment you thought, actually, I want to go back to corporate life because this is too difficult? Or were you just always thinking, no, I'm out of corporate life. I came out of corporate life for a reason. And are you the sort of person who just throws yourself 100% committed into what you're doing? Did you have a moment of doubt in there at all?
Oh, there were many, many moments of doubt, when I would really wonder, am I doing the right thing? Because as the chain was growing, people would call me from all over the country and, in the middle of the night and say, oh, I'm a friend of yours. I want to tell you this medicine is not available in your store. And I say, why on earth am I having to answer questions in the middle of the night? But having said that, the kind of person I believe I am, I've never looked behind. I've never looked back other than just to learn. And I was just very clear in my mind that what started with a single store, I wanted to build into a chain. And it grew into a chain of 250 company-owned stores. So there is no question in my mind that there were lots and lots and lots of self-doubts, lots and lots and lots of sleepless nights, and regrets at some time. But then there was, I believe I had the willpower to keep powering ahead.
So, and then how do you, it's not, of course, you're at the center of this, this growing sort of pharmacy empire, but of course you've got to not just lead, but you've got to delegate, you've got to manage, you've got to supervise, things like that. Did you always find that a comfortable thing to do? Because a lot of entrepreneurs don't find that very comfortable, or almost become the bottle stopper in their own growth because they can't let go.
Correct. So I think that is where the three large companies I worked for, that experience came in very, very handy. Basically, there were two things that I picked up with my large company experience that I brought into my own entrepreneurial venture. One is to have a strong management team who would really keep on taking the ball and running. And and they were much younger than me. And I always used to tell them, I said, I'm like your goalkeeper. I'll make sure I won't let anybody, shoot a goal. And you people have the younger legs. So you go out and run ahead. And I will be your, at the back, making sure that all your backs are protected. And I also used to tell other people, I said, when you are running at a high speed, my job is to clear your speed breakers so that you don't come in, have a big bump when you go. The second thing that I brought in was a lot of systems and procedures. One of the things that I have seen with a lot of entrepreneurs and startups is that systems don't work. Governance standards become an issue. People-related matters become an issue. So those are things that I made sure I brought in from day one, because I've often heard entrepreneurs say that I'm the owner and therefore everyone must be in office at 9 a.m., but I'm the owner, I don't have to be, So I used to go through this very often with a lot of colleagues, saying that when I'm in the company, I'm the chief executive officer. Shareholding is divorced from management, as far as in my own mind.
Now, in this process of growth, you've obviously sort of had lots of bumps in the road, as we all do, and so on.
Yeah.
Were there sort of setbacks or moments of failure? I should tell the listeners that you've written a book on failure, which not many people would do. I'd be fascinated to hear about your little bumps on the road along the way, and why you wrote the book.
So the reason I wrote the book on failure is I believe most parents, and I would certainly say most parents in South Asia, don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always told come first in class, go to the head of the line, and that manifests itself in our behavior patterns. And I've often said that it is very, very critical for children to understand that it is okay to fail, which is how my hypothesis of writing the whole book was that it's okay to fail. In all my conversations that I used to have in my podcast, in my season 1, I used to ask a lot of people, what was your biggest learning from your biggest failure? And I used a lot of those examples in my book. But when it came to me, I think, when someone asked me, can you talk about your failures? I said, I've had so many that I've written a book about it. But there were many. Opening a wrong store, selecting the wrong person, trusting people too much, not being able to follow up on stocks that were being stolen from a store. There were many instances where I had lots of failures. The only thing is that my learning over my years was that once I found out that I had made a mistake or I had failed at something, I would ensure that I wouldn't repeat it. I think that was very, very clear in my own mind, that I would take every one of my failures as an opportunity for me to understand and learn. And that is what I think was one of the hypotheses of the book as well.
And it is one thing to fail, as you say. You said earlier on about not looking back, but learning from what you're doing. When you are mentoring or talking to young entrepreneurs, or don't have to be young entrepreneurs, but they could be young in their entrepreneurial life at least.
Yeah.
Is there a kind of an innate confidence that you're able to share with them that you personally have? Or, do you see that in other people, or are people finding their way with their own confidence? They're not going to learn in the same way. Did you have that confidence as a sort of quiet confidence that was kind of helping you build, or did you have a time when actually you felt a bit like them, maybe not kind of grasping for the way forward?
No, so I wouldn't say that I had a lot of confidence in. I mentioned you I'm part of this organization called the YPO, and within YPO we have small groups of CEOs who are what's called a forum, and they're like an informal board of directors that you have. We meet every month for 4 hours. And I remember I used to take a lot of my challenges to them. And there were 9 other individuals who were entrepreneurs or senior corporate leaders who I would brainstorm with and get some answers. The second person who was always there in my life till 2015 was my father, who was a very highly decorated soldier. He was a brigadier general, twice decorated by the President of India. And he was not just my father, but he was my friend. And I think there was nothing hidden from him. So every time I had a problem, I would go to someone who was an elder in my family, my father, and I would go and brainstorm. And he would then listen to me and give me his thoughts and views. So I had 2 separate areas that I would talk to. And then the third set of people was my wife and both my sons. So I think what is very important for most people, and I tell a lot of these young people, whether it's a startup entrepreneur or anyone else, is that sooner than later, it's always a good idea to form a personal board of advisors. Get a group of 5, 6 friends who you trust, with whom you can become a little more vulnerable, because most of us are constantly struggling with trying to keep a facade because we don't want to look weak or vulnerable to anyone outside. So I always say that have a group of people you trust. This could be friends, it could be college mates, it could be family, or whoever you choose to have them, and talk to them, because I have seen that the best answers come when we express our thoughts, and more often than not, the answer is lying within us when we are faced with a challenge. But if we keep it bottled up inside, then it's a problem.
And I think that is a huge one, actually, and not actually something that our other guests to date have articulated. There is this kind of solo mentality in a lot of young entrepreneurs that, or early stage entrepreneurs, where they feel like it all comes down on them. And actually, we hear that a problem shared is a problem halved, and that is an incredibly valuable piece of advice to sort of pass on. In terms of you mentioned about once you'd sort of built up the business and you'd sold it. I mean, was that a difficult decision to sell, or were you ready to move on at that point? I mean, because
No,
some
I
people
was ready
find it
to move
hard.
on.
You know, some people find that hard
Yeah.
to let go, but maybe you
Yeah.
didn't.
Again, the answer is yes and no. I mean, I was at a stage where, I was going to be turning 60. I didn't have any family members who were coming back into, my children weren't coming back. They both live and work in large companies outside India. I just thought it's time for me to do something different. So I thought the best thing to do would be to exit, get involved in something very different.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you got involved with, as you said, was, when the pandemic struck, you've been involved in this sort of monumental effort in terms of sort of vaccinations and so on. And did your entrepreneurial experience help you in that, or I mean, in terms of the mobilization of resources, or was this just a completely different challenge that had nothing to do with
No,
being an
so I,
entrepreneur?
I I served on the board. I was invited on the board of Gavi, which is like it's a multilateral agency from 2006 to 2014. So I wasn't involved in the vaccination process,
Okay.
but I was associated with a lot of the work that was being done later on in and around community that I live in. But Gavi as an organization is one of the most transparent organizations in the world. It was founded by the Gates Organization and Mr. Mandela, who I've had the honor to meet a couple of times. And therefore, I was associated with the whole process. I was on television very often talking about what was happening in the vaccination world right through the pandemic.
Mm.
So that is where I was associated and involved.
Okay, and so as a communicator, of the
Correct.
messages and
Correct.
so on. Okay, that's really interesting. Also, I mean, that in itself is a hugely valuable role. In your entrepreneurial life, were there things that you really weren't very good at? If you're honest, I mean, did you have sort of things where
I do.
you kind of delegated to people because you weren't very good, or just kind of learned to
I would
master?
say that the two things that I've not been good at is, number one, I'm not a person for too much detail. I hate going through 300-page agreements and then you're expected to read it if you're going to sign it. So I would normally ask council to do it, and I have been let down several times because the council made me sign something which I shouldn't have signed. And the second thing is that I've always been told from the time I was 22, 23, in all my reviews and everything that was done, that I tended to trust people too much. And I mean, it's not something that I want to change because I would like to keep trusting people. But I do know that many, many people have let down my trust in them, which has harmed me and harmed the organization. So I would say that these are two areas which I do believe have been serious weaknesses or challenges that I have worked with.
And is there a way you can compensate for that? I mean, or do you just have to become more aware of the fact that maybe you're a bit too trusting?
I do have to become a little more aware. I have to be a little more conscious about who to place my trust in. But having said that, I don't want the pendulum to swing to the other extreme, where I stop trusting people or I start mistrusting everybody. So I think I have to get a little more aware and conscious of the people I decide to work with.
Okay, and I mean, just in terms of, it's difficult to sum all of this up because there's so much you've done and so many lessons to pass on here. But we want to give our listeners the confidence they need to succeed. Mm-hmm. Is there a single message or a single learning that that you would sort of pass on to them at all?
I would say that the single biggest learning that I have lived with is that don't ever hesitate to take a risk. Take risks as often as you want to, as often as you can, but make sure that these risks are done after thought. Recklessly taking a risk is not something that I would recommend. And yet just sitting in my little cocoon and saying, I'm not going to stick my neck out. And I've often said this at conferences, of that old phrase, that a tortoise only makes progress when it sticks its neck out. So I would say take risks. I think that's a very, very important part of life.
Okay, and but maybe get the facts sort of and sort of analyze it and be analytical, and then take the risk. So
Correct.
yeah, okay, fantastic. That's great. That's great advice. So what are you up to now? You've talked about a little bit about what you're up to now, but maybe let's expand on that. Is there anything that you're working on that you want to promote or you're particularly excited? You mentioned a book. You're writing a 9th one. So
I've got a new one
tell me about that and anything else you want, really. So.
Okay, so one thing that I certainly want to talk about is my podcast. I think it's become the world's largest platform. And as I was mentioning to you before we started recording, we get about 150,000 views and listens every day. And on one of the TikTok competitors, where we put 1-minute videos, we are beginning to see almost 2 million views per day. So therefore, I do believe that this has probably become one of the largest podcast platforms for what I call leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom. So that's something which I would urge people to go and check out. It's called The Brand Called You. My new book, I've not yet agreed on anything with the publisher, but it is the book that I'm working on is, the working title is Management Lessons from Hindu Scriptures. The Hindu scriptures go back to 5,000-7,000 years. And there are a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of understanding in that. So I'm correlating a lot of that learning with the UN SDGs. What the 17 SDGs that we talk about today, many of them have been spoken about in great detail in our scriptures 5,000 years ago. So, that's the book that I'm working on right now.
And I think in all religions, there is so much knowledge and wisdom that in many ways, when we think about the problems or challenges we're facing, you're almost certain that somebody has at some point already faced, a problem, whether in a strict business sense or in a wider sort of spiritual sense.
Absolutely.
So there is so much to learn from those. So Ash, finally, if people want to find out more about you or get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I would say the best thing would be to look for my LinkedIn profile. Ashutosh Garg is my LinkedIn, is my name. There are maybe I think 4 or 5 Ashutosh Gargs on LinkedIn, but I'm sure you can look at my face and Ashutosh Garg Delhi, and just send me a message on LinkedIn. I generally respond to all messages.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Merri-Cast this week, Ash.
Thank you, Trevor, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Now let's think about some of the outstanding points that Ash made in that interview. He explained why you should take risks, the importance of being a business goalkeeper, and why it is okay to fail. He also shared why you should have a personal board of advisors and the importance of systems and procedures. Thank you, Ash, for your time, for making all those brilliant points. Thank you for tuning in too. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate and review through your usual podcast provider. And if you want to find out more about the Merri-Cast or our business Merrible Media, you can find us on LinkedIn or email me at trevor.merridan@merriblemedia.co.uk. Don't forget to join us for our next episode, but until then, thanks for listening.